Hi there. Right, now I'm going to show you how you put an insert into a napkin or a table runner or a tablecloth. Now this method you could actually use to put a quilt backing on. So this could be your finished quilt all quilted with your wadding. You could do this on your backing, you could slip this in and then you could just quilt it, top stitch it. It'd be a cheaty method. So I've done all three corners and they are all 3 centimeters. So you know the drill, you press up your 3 centimeters, you mark with a cross where the two pieces cross, you put your raw edges together like this, and this time it's a patterned fabric and it's very soft linen, this one. This is one of Flossiphy Art's designs, which is really nice. And then you put your 45-degree angle on and you draw across your 45 degrees with your water erasable pen. Now these pencils are from Clover. They're very, very good, and they wash out straight away. They're great. And they come in 3 colours, white, blue and pink in a pack. They're very, very good. So they're water soluble pencil, and we do sell them. So here's my mark and here's my pin. So I'm sewing from here to here, and this time this is a raw edge. Now you can sew completely from that raw edge in, or if you're uncomfortable with the next bit I'm going to show you, you could actually start 6 millimeters in, but I'll explain that in a minute. Okay, I'm just going to do it from the edge, but you could start 6 mils in when you see the method that I'm going to show you. So again, get your scrap of fabric, which is here, put it on a 45-degree angle, sew down here so you've got a starter, because you're working on fine fabric, you don't want it to move and you don't want it to eat into the foot, the feed dogs, and reverse, and then sew to your point. Such an easy method. You'll never be scared of miters ever again. Get your scissors up. And again, I like to cut after I've stitched it. I don't like to cut it out. So same deal with this one. Go up and across. Very, very neat. Open it out. And press it flat and turn it through. Use your handy little tool. You could get these made if you like. They're very, very good. And press it. Okay. Now if I was doing this a little bit slowly, I would re-press all of this to make sure that it's all exactly the finish width, because it's very important for this particular one. So make sure that it's all, you'd measure it of course, that it's all measured correctly all the way down. And then all you do is you get your piece of lining, and I've given you the measurements for this. Okay, turn this back to the wrong side. Oh, that's good. This one I've done that. So this one I started 1/4 of an inch from the edge. This one I've sewn to the edge, so you can see which method you like best. The reason why I did that is because if you start 1/4 of an inch from the edge, you can pretty much get this piece out of the road. So when you sew this piece on, you can go right from the raw edge, right? If you haven't done that, then you just need to overlap this by 6 mils, so you're starting from your sewing point right in the middle there. So you might find it easier to do that. I'll just get some pins. So all you're doing for this method is you're sewing exactly from that point and you're sewing to the end here. So your lining obviously is shorter. I've given you the measurements. And you're just sewing this down. Now some of you might find it easier to sew on this side so you can see where you're going and where you're starting. Okay, so if you've not done it before, it's a good idea. You can actually move that completely out of the road, that seam, so you can see exactly 6 mils and you're sewing from this stitching line here to that stitching line there. Okay, so it's a little bit more fiddly, but it's very, very effective. So you might like to do these ones. And just pin and pin and pin there. Okay, and you can see how this frays this fabric, so you don't want to be handling it too much. It's a lovely lightweight linen. I'm using a firmer linen in the middle, but it will be really nice and it will wear beautifully once it's all stitched. So with this one, I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm starting exactly on my sewing line there where I've sewn the last one, and I'm just putting my foot down and put my needle down, and once your needle's in place, it's not going to move. You're running your raw edges along the raw edge of your fabric. You go forward and reverse and away you go. Okay, take the pins out as you go. You'll notice I always put the pins this way so I can pull the heads out. If you're left-handed, you might like to put the pins with the heads this way. Okay, but if you put your pins this way, vertically, it's going to stretch. If you put them horizontally, it will not stretch between the pins, and that works for every single type of sewing. So always put them the correct way and you won't get any movement in your garment or your craft item. Okay, make sure your raw edges are together. Doesn't even feel like there's anything under there, it's so light. It's a really light linen. And then remember, you're coming right down to here and sewing to that seam. And this one is the one that I took back to 1/4 inch, so I'm sewing exactly to that point. Now, that's all very well doing one side. Okay, that's easy. And what happens is when it's finished, this all tucks under, this all tucks under. You press your seam in towards, well, it depends on which way you want to do it. You can either put the bulk of it in there, or I would put the seam towards my white. Okay, now what happens is if you forget to leave an opening, you're not going to be able to turn it through, so you have to make an opening. So I'll just do a mark here so you can see. I'm going to put a stay stitch there and there, and on the same side here, here and here. And a stay stitch is just a row of stitching inside my 1/4 inch so that when I turn it through I won't stretch my fabric. So I'm just going to do that now to show you. So I'm just going to run a little stay stitch in here, and it's just a straight stitch just to secure my fabric, and especially this one because it's really light. And in the same side I'm putting a stay stitch here. Now that's going to be my opening, so I'm not going to sew that. Now the only other thing you need to know about doing this is you now want to turn this to sew it to this point. So you need to cut this fabric to that stitching line. So here's my 1/4 inch. Here. So when I turn my fabric will turn. Can you see that? So it was just here. I clipped in 6 millimeters. I turned my fabric and it will turn around, and now I can just move your thumb, roll it over, and now I can stitch from here to here. But this time I'm leaving my opening. There's my fold. Here's my opening. I'm only sewing to this point, and I'm doing a 6 mil seam. Then I'm leaving that open to turn it all through, and I'm going from here to here. So again, you can turn it over, and remember to overlap that by 6 mils. Turn it over this way so you can see, and overlap that, and you'll start sewing. I'll put a pin there so you can see it right from this point here. So this time I'm only sewing from here to here. I'll make sure that's nice and flat. Leaving my opening. Oh, I got too much fabric in there. Oh, that's better. So sewing from this point to this point, reversing, reversing, and sewing up to my end. So I'm going to do that one now, and then you'll see exactly what you're doing, and then you just sew the other two the same without leaving an opening. So it's quite a nice method. It's a little bit fiddlier, obviously, but you're making a double napkin with two different colours. I like it. So when you get up to here, just reverse, cut your thread, and when you get to this side, just lay it down. Make sure you've got your raw edges all even. There. Go forward and reverse. And I am challenging you all to do a sample to show me, because it is a really good method to learn. This is not how I would do the quilt, by the way. I'm going to tell you that in a minute. That's coming up to that point. What I would do for a quilt is, so here's my nice opening now, and do the same to the other, this method to the other two. So for a quilt, what I do, I will show you. Point that out. Sit that down. Point that out. Use your point turner. Pop this back out. And then give it a really good press, and you've got a really beautiful mitre with a lining. Put your seam. Decide on the, depends on the fabric, which way I would press that seam. On this particular one, it just wants to go inwards because it's a thicker lining. And then you can press this opening under. Oops, press that down. And then you just top stitch the whole thing. Top stitching it towards this one, not towards that one. So you top stitch on here. I just do a straight stitch. But it's a nice finish. Cut your threads. Why have I got threads there? I don't know. Cut your thread there. So you don't need to overlock it or anything, because when you top stitch this, it will secure it. But that's a really nice napkin finish. I like that. Now what I do for a quilt, you know how I said you could use the method of what I've shown you today for the quilt. What I do is I would use the double hem method for my backing and my border of my quilt. Then I would get my quilt, pretend this is my quilt, and I would butt it underneath here, and then I just top stitch it on. So, you know, you could have your quilt right, oh here, you could use this for the instance. This in here could be my quilt, and I'd butt it right up to my corner, and then I just put my pins in like this, and I would top stitch around there, and I've made a really cool backing of a quilt, or a wall hanging, or anything. Be quite cool. So this could be all quilted in here, then you just shove it in there and top stitch it. So it's a double corner. Put the quilt, make sure it's the right size, and then just top stitch all the way around. It's another cheaty method of finishing off a quilt. So yeah, so there you go. So that's just, I just thought I'd cover that because I think it's really, really nice, and I think it's a really good way of doing mitres really, really quickly and easily. But you must make sure you've got a 45 degree, this is so old, but it's got a 45 degree angle. That's the secret. Okay, so I hope there's something on there you've learnt. If not, just using your number 10 foot, how to move your needle positions, how to use fancy stitches, but you can make yourself beautiful napkins without paying the horrendous price they make you pay in the shops. And we sell the linen, just saying. So we've got all the beautiful designer linens in store, and we also have the beautiful plains and the Essex linens and the Lithuanian linen. It's a big word, but it's beautiful linen. So we do sell a lot of linens in store. So have a really good day. Oh, by the way, if you've forgotten, our website is mybernina.co.nz. So have a really good day and enjoy sewing with linens.